Hello friends, John Doe here, and today I'm going to read you the story, The Vampire by John William Polidori. Polidori, I think, maybe. I am very bad with names, so, yeah. This is about a vampire and the seduction and murder in aristocratic life. The name is spelled Vampire is spelled Vampyre, and I looked that up, and I believe it's the old way of spelling it. I don't know if the author used it to give it a more ancient vibe, um, because the book story appears to have been written in like the 1800s. I think that's what the thing said. Uh, yeah, so I'm just gonna start reading. It happened that in the midst of the desperations attendant upon a London winter, there appeared at the various parties of the leaders of the ton a nobleman, more remarkable for his singularities than his rank. He gazed upon the mirth around him, as if he could not participate therein. Apparently, the light laughter of the fair only attracted his attention, that he might by a look quell it, and throw fear into those where thoughtlessness reigned. Those who felt the sensation of awe could only explain whence it arose. Some attributed it to the dead grey eye, which, fixing upon the object's face, did not seem to penetrate, and at one glance to pierce through the inward workings of the heart, but fell upon the cheek of the laden with a laden ray that weighed upon the skin. It could not pass. His particularities caused him to be invited to every house. All wished to see him, and those who had been accustomed to violent, violent excitement, and now felt the weight of ennui, were pleased at having something in their presence capable of engaging their attention, in spite of the deadly hue of his face. Yeah, deadly. I thought that said deathly, but no, it's deadly. Which were gained a warmer tint, or which never gained a warmer tint, either from the blush of modesty or from the strong emotion of passion. Though its form and outline were beautiful, many of the female hunters, after notoriety, attempted to win his attentions, and gain at least some mark of what they might have termed affection. Lady Mercer? We'll call him Mercer, because I don't know how to spell that, or pronounce that, who had been the mockery of every monster shewn in drawing rooms since her marriage, threw herself in his way, and did not put and did all but put on the dress of a mountebank. I have no idea what a mountebank is. Um, to attract his notice, though in vain. When she stood before him, though his eyes were apparently fixed upon her, still it seemed as if they were unperceived. Even her unappalled impudence was baffled, and she left the field. But through the common adulteress could not influence the guidance of his what's that? But though the common adulteress could not influence the guidance of his gray I don't know why I had gray of his eyes, it was not that the female gender was indifferent to him. Yet such was the apparent caution with which he spoke to the various wife and innocent daughter, that few knew him he ever addressed himself to females. He had, however, the reputation of a winning tongue, and whether it was that it ever overcame the dread of his singular character, or that they were moved by his apparent hatred of vice, he was often among those females who, from the boast of their domestic virtues as among those who sully it by their vices. About the same time, there came to London a young gentleman of the name Aubrey. He was an orphan, left with an only sister in the possession of a great wealth by parents who died while he was yet in childhood. Left also to himself by guardians who thought it their duty merely to take care of his fortune, while they relinquished more important charge of his mind to the care of mercenary subalterns. He cultivated more his imagination than his judgment. He had hence that high romantic feeling of honor and candor which daily runs so many milliners, apprentices. He believed all to sympathize with virtue, and thought that vice was thrown in by Providence merely for the picturesque effect of the scene. As we see in romances, he thought that the mystery of a cottage merely consisted in the vestings of clothing which were as worn, but which were better adapted to the painter's eye by their irregular folds and various colored patches. He thought, in fine, that the dreams of poets were the reality of life. He was handsome, frank, rich. For these reasons, upon his entering into gay circles, many mothers surrounded him, striving which should describe with least their languish or romping favorites. The daughters at the same time, by the brightening of cowardice, of conscientious when he approached, and by their sparkling eyes when he opened his lips, soon led him into false notions of his talents and his merit. Attached as he was to the romance of his solitary hours, he was startled at finding that, except in the tallow and wax candles that flickered, not from the presence of a ghost, but from the want of snuffing, there was no foundation in real life for any of that congeries of pleasing pictures and descriptions contained in those volumes from which he had formed his study. Finding, however, some contemplation in his gratified vanity, he was about to relinquish his dreams when the extraordinary began we had described across his career. He watched him. What on earth? Oh, there's an advertisement, so it's really skinny, so I'm gonna try to read this. He watched him and the very impossibility of forming an idea of the character of a man entirely absorbed in himself, who gave few other signs of his observation of external objects than the tacit, I don't know how to pronounce that, tacit assessment of their existence, implied by the avoidance of their contact, allowing his imagination to picture everything that flattered its proponent, propensity to the extravagant ideas. He soon formed this object into the hero of a romance, and determined to observe the offspring of his fantasy, rather than the person before him. He became acquainted with him, paid him attention, became acquainted with him, paid him attentions, and so far advanced upon his notice that his presence was always recognized. He gradually learned that Lord Ruthven's affairs were preparation in street. It's like a weird like line underscore dash combination thingy. Uh, Preparation in street. That he was about to travel, desirous of gaining some information respecting this singular character who till now had only whetted his curiosity. He hinted to his guardians that it was time for him to perform the tour which so many generations had been through necessary to enable the young to take some rapid steps in their career of vice toward putting themselves upon an equality within the aged, and not allowing them to appear as if fallen from the skies, whenever scandalous intrigues are mentioned as a subject of uh, pleasantry or of praise according to the degree of skill shewn in carrying them on. They consented, and Aubrey immediately mentioning his intentions to Lord Ruthven, was surprised to receive from him a proposal to join him. Flattered by such a mark of esteem from him, who apparently had nothing in common with other men, he gladly accepted it, and in a few days they had passed the circles of water. Hitherto, Aubrey had no opportunity of studying Lord Ruthven's character, and now he found that though many more of his actions were exposed to his view, the results offered different conclusions. From the apparent motives of his conduct, his compassion and profuse in his liberty, the idle vagabond, and the beggary received from his hand more than enough to receive their immediate wants. But Aubrey could not avoid remarking that it was not upon the virtuous to reduce to indulgence by the misfortunes attendant, even upon virtue that he bestowed his alms. These were sent from the door with hardly surprised sneers, but the profligate came to ask something, not to receive his wants, but to allow him to wallow in his lust, or to sink him deeper into his inequality. He was sent away with rich charity. This was, however, attributed by him to the greater importance of the victorious, which generally prevails over the retiring bashfulness of the virtuous and independent. There was one circumstance about the charity of his lordship which was still more impressed upon his mind. All those upon whom it was bestowed inevitably found that there was a curse upon it, for they were all either led to the scaffold or sunk to the lowest and the most abject misery at Brussels and the other towns through which they passed. Aubrey was surprised at the apparent earnestness which his companion sought for the centuries of all fashionable vice. There he entered into the spirit of the Pharaoh tale. Sorry, to the spirit into all the spirit of the Pharaoh table. He bettered and always gambled. He betted and always gambled with success, except where the known sharper was his antagonistic his antagonist, and then he lost even more than he gained. But it was always with the same unchanged, changing face with which he generally watched the society around. It was not, however, so when he encountered the rash, youthful novice of the luckless father of a numerous family. Then his very wish seemed fortune's law. This apparent abstractness of his mind was laid aside, and his eyes sparkled with more fire than that of the cat, whilst dallying of the half-dead mouse in every town. He left formerly affluent youth, torn from the circle he adored. He abhorred, cursing, in the solitude of a dungeon, the fate that he had drawn him within, and reached of this fiend whilst many a father sat frantic amidst the speaking looks of the mute hungry children, without a single farthing in his immense wealth, wherewith to buy even sufficient to satisfy their present craving. Yet he took no money from the gambling table, but immediately lost to the ruiner of many, the last gilder he had just snatched from the convulsed grasp of the innocent. That might but be the result of a certain degree of knowledge, which was not, however, capable of combating the cunning of the more experienced. Aubrey often wished to represent this to his friend, and beg him to resign that charity and pleasure which profound the ruin of all, and did not tend to his own profit. But he delayed it, for each day he hoped his friend would give him some opportunity of speaking frankly, openly to him. However, this never occurred. We're going to finish right there. If you liked this story and want to hear the rest of it, please like, subscribe, and hit the little bell thingy so you can hear the next one. Yeah, and farewell, friends.